The human trader named Ethan Cross wasn't looking for anything more than a warm meal and some fuel. His ship had landed near a small alien village on a green, peaceful planet known as Kirel-4. The people were quiet, mostly kept to themselves. That suited Ethan just fine. He liked being alone. He sat outside a local food stall made of stone and wood, eating something that looked like roasted roots but tasted like honeyed bread. He didn't notice her at first, not until a small voice said, "Human, my mother needs a husband." Ethan paused mid-dash bite. He turned. A little alien girl stood beside his table. Her skin was pale lavender, her eyes big and silver like moons. She couldn't have been older than 6 in human years. She clutched a handmade doll with worn-out fabric. Her thin frame and dusty clothes told Ethan she didn't have much. He blinked. "I'm sorry." "What did you say?" The girl stepped closer, eyes full of sadness. "My mother cries every night since my dad left. She says she's fine, but I hear her. I think she needs someone. A husband." Ethan didn't know what to say. Was this a joke? Some kind of scam? Or was it something darker? He looked around. Nobody laughed. No one else seemed to care. The food vendor just kept wiping his hands. Other aliens walked by like nothing happened. "I think you have the wrong person," Ethan said softly. But the girl shook her head. "No, you're kind. You said thank you to the food man." "You smiled." "Nobody smiles here." Ethan sighed. "Where's your mother?" "She's at home," the girl whispered. "She doesn't come out much anymore. It's always cold, even when it's warm. I bring her food, but she forgets to eat." Ethan stared at her. The girl's eyes weren't begging. They weren't scared. They were simply honest. Too honest for someone so small. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mira." She replied, "Will you come just to say hello, please? If you don't want to be her husband, that's okay." Her voice cracked on the last word. Ethan ran a hand down his face. He didn't want to get involved. He had to leave in the morning. But something about the girl made it impossible to say no. "All right," he finally said. "Show me." Mira's face lit up not with joy, but relief. They walked down a dirt path through dry grass. Houses made of stone and metal were built into the hillsides. Some had lights. Others looked abandoned. Finally, they reached a small home with a broken door. Vines crawled up its sides. The front step was cracked. Myra opened it carefully and motioned him in. The inside was dim. A fire pit burned low in the center. There were blankets on the ground and a pot of soup that smelled burnt. Ethan spotted an old photo on the wall, a smiling alien male with a young woman and baby Mira. "She's in the back room," Mira whispered. "She doesn't talk to strangers much." Ethan waited, unsure. Then, slowly, he heard something. A soft sound. Not a cough. Not breathing. Crying, the sound of someone trying to be silent but failing. Ethan turned to Mira. She looked away. "She cries every night," the girl said. "She thinks I can't hear, but I do." Ethan walked closer to the door. He knocked. "Gently, ma'am. I'm not here to bother you. Your daughter brought me." Silence. "Then she had no right to do that," came a tired voice. "I told her not to speak to strangers." Ethan swallowed. "She didn't ask me for money. She didn't lie. She just asked me to say hello." A pause. Then the door creaked open. Just a little. He saw Hurley Raw. She was beautiful, but exhausted. Her purple skin was faded, eyes sunken from lack of sleep. She wore a simple robe, her hair messy and unwashed. "You should leave," she whispered. "They'll talk. They'll say I'm desperate." "You're not desperate," Ethan replied. Gently. "You're grieving." Her eyes flashed. "What do you know of grief?" My wife died, Ethan said. 7 years ago. I know the sound of crying alone. Lyra's eyes welled up, but she looked away. Myra ran in and hugged her mother tightly. He's kind, Mama. Please don't be sad anymore. Lyra knelt slowly and held her daughter close. Her hands trembled. Ethan watched quietly. He didn't come to stay. He didn't plan to care. But something inside him whispered. Maybe this was where he was meant to be. Ethan didn't sleep much that night. He had returned to his ship after meeting Myra and her mother, but her face, Lyra's tired eyes, trembling hands, and soft, broken voice stayed in his thoughts. He wasn't sure why he cared. He was just a traveler, not a savior. But something about that small house, full of silence and sorrow, wouldn't let him go. The next morning, he stood outside the same home. Myra was sitting on the front step, brushing her doll's hair with a twig. When she saw him, her whole face brightened. You came back, she said, standing up quickly. I was nearby, Ethan said casually, though they both knew it was a lie. Myra stepped aside to let him in. She's awake today. She didn't cry this morning. Ethan nodded but said nothing. Inside, the fire had been lit properly this time. There was a faint smell of herbs cooking in a pot. It smelled warm, alive, but the house was still too quiet. Lyra stood near the back, folding clothes. Her eyes lifted when Ethan walked in, then quickly dropped to the floor. You really came back, she murmured. I didn't mean to intrude, he said, unsure what else to say. You're already here, she whispered. They stood in silence. Myra broke it. Mama, can Ethan eat with us? Lyra looked torn, but then she nodded. If he wishes. Ethan took a seat near the fire, while Myra served thin soup in wooden bowls. It wasn't much, but Ethan smiled anyway. Smells better than the rations on my ship. That earned him the smallest flicker of a smile from Lyra. They ate in silence. Myra kept talking about flowers, stars, her doll. Ethan listened and responded like a friend, not a guest. After a while, Lyra stood and walked to the window. She stared out at the village. I wasn't always like this, she said, not turning around. I used to sing. I used to laugh. My daughter never got to see that version of me. Ethan set his bowl down. It's not too late. She gave a small, bitter laugh. It is when people look at you like you're dirt, when they whisper behind your back. He frowned. Why would they do that? Because my husband left me. And in this village, when a man leaves, the woman must be the reason. Myra looked down at her hands, silent for the first time. They said I was cursed, that I was too cold, too quiet, too much trouble. Lyra's voice cracked. Even my own sisters turn their backs. No one visits. No one speaks. They say I failed as a mate. Ethan shook his head. You didn't fail. He did. Lyra turned then, slowly, as if afraid to hope. You say that because you're human. Your kind doesn't follow the same rules. Here, a woman without a man is nothing. Ethan stood up and faced her. Then maybe your people are wrong. She stared at him. Her lips trembled like she wanted to speak or cry. But instead, she said, Why are you really here? He paused. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe because your daughter reminded me of someone I lost. Maybe because I was tired of flying alone. Or maybe just didn't want to walk away from something real. Lyra stepped back, like his words were too heavy to carry. You don't even know me. I'm trying to, Ethan said softly. She looked away again, arms wrapping around herself. I'm not asking you to stay, she said. But don't lie to Myra. Don't give her hope if you plan to leave. I won't lie, he promised. There was another silence. This one was different, not awkward, but heavy, honest. Then Myra suddenly spoke. Mama, last night you didn't cry. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. That's only because I was too tired. No, Mira whispered. It was because... Someone finally knocked on our door. Ethan said nothing. His chest tightened. He couldn't fix this, not with words, but maybe... Just being there was enough. Lyra quietly picked up the bowls and started cleaning. Ethan helped without being asked. No one said it. But something had changed. Later that evening, after Ethan returned to his ship, he sat by the window and looked out at the dark horizon. He wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was clear: he couldn't leave yet, not while those two hearts still cried in silence. And maybe, just maybe, he had found a place that needed him more than space ever did. The sun on Corel 4 was softer than Earth's. It cast a silver-pink glow over the village roofs as Ethan walked the same dirt path once again. This time, he didn't hesitate. Something kept pulling him back to that small, cracked house. It wasn't just Mira's innocent hope or Lyra's quiet pain. It was something deeper, a feeling he couldn't explain, as if that broken family had been waiting for someone exactly like him. And somehow, he had been waiting for them to. Myra opened the door before he even knocked. "She's better today," she said, smiling brightly. "She braided my hair this morning." Ethan grinned. "You look like royalty." Mira giggled, stepping aside to let him in. Lyra was by the fire again, warming her hands. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. "I thought you'd be gone by now," she said calmly. "I'm not ready to leave yet," Ethan replied. Lyra gave him a long look. "You really don't owe us anything." "Maybe I do," he said. "Not with words, just by being here." She didn't answer, but something softened in her face. Later that day, the sky darkened as clouds gathered. Ethan helped fix the broken window in the back room. Myra sat nearby, drawing pictures on the floor with a piece of burnt wood. Lyra quietly stitched old cloth into clean blankets. Then suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Not a soft one, a loud, hard bang. Lyra froze. The color drained from her face. Myra's drawing slipped from her hand. Ethan stood up quickly. "Who is it?" Lyra whispered. "Don't open it." But it was too late. The door pushed open with a creak. In stepped a tall, alien male guard, sharp-eyed and grinning with something cold behind his teeth. "Hello, Lyra," he said in a voice that made Ethan instantly tense. She stood up slowly. "Tovek, what are you doing here?" Ethan's body stiffened. So this was him, the husband. The man who left. Tovek's eyes scanned the room, then landed on Ethan, a human. He laughed. "You've fallen that low." Ethan stepped between him and the women. "If you're here to insult, leave now." Tovek smirked. "Who are you to speak for her?" Lyra said nothing. She looked down at the floor like she didn't want to breathe. Tovek took a step forward. "You know, I was thinking about reclaiming what's mine. I left for a while, sure. But technically, she's still bonded to me by old village law." Myra hugged her mother's leg tightly. "No." Ethan's jaw clenched. "She doesn't want you back." Tovek's smile turned to a scowl. "That's not her choice to make. This is Kirel, not Earth. Things work differently here." Lyra finally looked up, voice trembling. "You left us. You broke the bond. You have no claim." "You can't." "Prove anything," he spat. "The elders still respect me. And if you defy them, they'll throw you out." Mira started crying. Ethan's fists clenched. He wanted to throw the man out right there. But he also knew this wasn't Earth. One wrong move could hurt Lyra and Mira even more. So instead, he said, "Then let's ask the elders." Tovek laughed cruelly. "You don't belong here, human. Stay out of it, or I'll make sure you regret ever landing on this dirt ball." With that, he turned and walked out. Slamming the door behind him, Lyra sank to the floor. Her shoulders shook, but she didn't cry. Ethan knelt beside her. "Are you all right?" She nodded slowly. He always knows how to break people without touching them. Mira wiped her tears and sat beside her mother. Ethan looked at both of them. "What if we prove he has no power over you?" Lyra looked at him with tired eyes. "They believe him because he's louder, stronger. I'm just the abandoned one. They pity me, but they don't protect me." Ethan said quietly, "Then maybe it's time someone did." Lyra stared at him. "Why?" "Because you matter. Because she matters." He nodded at Mira. "And because someone needs to stand up when no one else will." She blinked fast, as if she didn't want to cry. "You don't even know half of what I've been through." "Then tell me," he said softly. She took a shaky breath. Tovik was never kind. Tovik was never kind. He was cruel. He controlled me, insulted me, pushed me away. When Mira was born, he said she wasn't strong enough to be his daughter. Then one day, he just vanished. No warning. Just gone. And the village said it was my fault. Ethan felt anger rise in his chest. "I begged them for help," Lyra continued, "but they closed their doors. I raised Mira alone. I worked, begged, starved, and all the while, it looked at me like I was broken." "You're not broken," Ethan said. "You're surviving." She looked at him, really looked for the first time, and then she whispered, "I don't know how to trust you, but I want to." Outside, the wind howled. Inside, for the first time, Lyra didn't look like she was hiding. Ethan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to trust me yet," he said. "Just let me be here." She nodded, not as a wife, not as a victim, just as a woman who wanted someone to stay. 3 days passed. Quiet days. Ethan stayed close to the house. He helped fix the broken roof, repaired the cooking fire, and even planted small food seeds near the back wall. Myra followed him like a shadow, cheerful and talkative. Lyra had begun speaking more short sentences at first, but then longer. Once, she even laughed softly when Mira tried to braid Ethan's messy hair. But no one forgot about Tvek knew that silence often meant danger was coming, and it came early one morning, just after the sun turned the sky a pale orange. Mira was sweeping the dusty floor when the sound of boots echoed outside. Loud, slow, firm. Lyra stood up quickly, her body tense. Ethan looked through the cracked curtain. 4 figures walked toward the house. Tovik and 3 village elders. Each elder wore long gray robes and metal neckbands, the mark of law on Kirel 4. Their faces were serious, emotionless. They didn't smile. They didn't greet. They came to judge. Ethan opened the door before they knocked. One of the elders, an old male with 3 scars down his chin, spoke first. "Human, you are not a citizen of this village, and yet you interfere in our affairs." "I didn't interfere," Ethan said calmly. "I protected someone who was abandoned." Tovik stepped forward, his voice cold. "She was never abandoned. I left to earn honor. Now I have returned, and by our law, my claim still stands." Lyra stepped beside Ethan. Her voice was trembling, but clear. "You left us without a word. For over 5 cycles. You broke the bond." One of the elders raised a hand. "Did you officially end the bond, Lyra?" "No," she admitted. "I didn't have the power to." "He never returned. I had no voice." "Then the law is unclear," the elder replied. "We must hear both sides." Ethan's patience thinned. "Let me ask one question. If he had returned yesterday to find Lyra gone, would you force her back to him?" The elders were silent. Lyra spoke again. "I raised Mira alone. I lived alone. I cried alone. Tovik did not care then. Why should he have power now? Tovik stepped forward, smirking. Because I want it now. You're still mine. Mira clung to her mother's leg, whispering, no. Ethan moved between them. No, she's not. Not anymore. One elder turned to Ethan. By our customs, only a male of Kirel can challenge another for bond rights. I may not be of Kirel, Ethan said, but I will still challenge him. The crowd of villagers had started to gather outside now. Word had spread. Lyra's voice cracked. Ethan, no. You'll be punished if you lose. He looked at her gently. And I won't lose. Tovik laughed. You think a soft human can fight me? You'll be crawling back to your ship. One elder nodded. Challenge accepted. As the human wishes to protect her, he will fight under Verdun rule, no weapons, no armor. One fall, one winner. Lyra stepped forward, grabbing Ethan's arm. Please, don't do this for me. I'm not doing it for you, he said. With a small smile, I'm doing it for the girl who whispered to me that night, the one who asked me to stay. Myra looked up, her eyes wet. Please win, Ethan. The village square was a flat circle of red sand. The crowd stood in silence. Lyra and Mira stood together at the edge, hearts pounding. Ethan stood across from Tovik, his shirt off, arms dusty. He looked smaller, weaker, but his eyes held steel. Tovik lunged first, fast and brutal. Ethan dodged but took a hit to the side. Pain flared. He rolled, got up, and moved again. Tovik shouted, You should have stayed out of this, human. Ethan didn't answer. He waited. Focused. He remembered old training, back when he was a soldier, before he became a traitor. He wasn't stronger, but he was smarter. Tovik charged again, this time aiming low. Ethan stepped aside and used the alien zone. Weight grabbed his shoulder, twisted his legs, and flipped him hard onto the sand. A thud, a cry. Dust, silence. Then the elder raised his hand. It is finished. The human has won. The crowd whispered. A few even clapped. Tovik groaned, his pride more broken than his body. He crawled away without a word. Lyra ran to Ethan. She didn't speak. She just touched his face gently. Like she couldn't believe he was real. Mira hugged his leg, crying. Softly. You did it. Ethan looked at them and smiled. He won't come back again. That night, the village was quiet. But in one small home, the fire burned warm. And no one cried themselves to sleep. Lyra still didn't say the words aloud. But in her eyes, Ethan saw something he hadn't seen before. Trust, and maybe, the beginning of love. Ethan didn't sleep in his ship anymore. After the challenge with Tovik, the villagers no longer whispered behind Lyra's back. They didn't throw stones at her house, and they didn't mock Mira when she walked to the water well. They still didn't smile or speak much, but the silence no longer felt cruel. It felt like respect. And in that silence, something new began. Ethan helped every morning. He repaired the broken fence behind Lyra's house. He carried water, cleaned pots, and showed Mira how to use his human tools. Sometimes he even told stories about Earth, about trees that turned red in the fall, about snow that fell like feathers. Mira's eyes sparkled with every tale. Lyra watched him quietly. She didn't speak much at first. Her hands were still tense, her eyes still full of memories she never said out loud. But when Ethan laughed with Mira or fixed something without being asked, she always looked at him with a softness that hadn't been there before. One day, while Mira napped under a sun-warmed blanket, Lyra sat with Ethan beside the fire. Why? Do you really stay? She asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. He stared into the fire like it held the truth. Because I made a promise, he finally said. To Myra? She asked. He nodded. She asked me not to lie. and I told her I wouldn't leave. Lyra looked down. You could still leave. You've done more than anyone. I don't want to, he said softly. She didn't look up, but her fingers twisted together in her lap. You're kind, Ethan. But kindness doesn't mean you belong here. He turned to her. Does anyone truly belong anywhere? Or do we make a place our home by the people we choose to care for? She looked at him, then really looked. Her eyes were watery, but she didn't cry. I don't know how to trust what I feel, she whispered. You don't have to rush, Ethan replied. I'll stay, even if you never say the words. That night, when he rose to leave, Lyra stood as well. You can sleep here, she said softly. Inside, not in your ship, Ethan smiled. Only if you truly want that, she nodded. Mira wants it, and I do too. Days passed. In a week, Ethan built a bed from old wood and lined it with cloth and soft grass. Amira called it Papa's bed when she thought no one heard her. One afternoon, Ethan found Lyra outside, standing by the edge of the hill. The wind played with her hair. Her arms were crossed, but she wasn't cold. I haven't stood here since he left, she said. Ethan joined her. Do you want to talk about it? She shook her head. I just don't want to forget how far I've come. She turned to him. You came here by accident, and you could have left, but you didn't. I think some accidents are just the universe giving us what we need, he said. She laughed softly. That sounds like something Mira would say. She's wiser than we are. Ethan smiled. They stood in silence, the sun setting behind the trees. The moment felt whole, but nothing stays quiet forever. Later that evening, as Myra played inside, Lyra and Ethan sat by the fire again. Lyra picked up a carved cup and traced her fingers along its rim. Her voice was soft, almost scared. If I ever asked you to stay for good, what would you say? Ethan looked at her, surprised, but not because of her question. It was the way she asked it. Like she was afraid of the answer. I'd say yes, he replied. But I can't give you much, she said quickly. Just a broken home, a half-healed heart, and a child who already thinks of you as a father. That's everything, Ethan said. That's more than I ever had. Tears filled her eyes again, but this time, she didn't look away. I want you to stay, she said. Not because Mira wants it. Not because I'm afraid. But because, when you're near, the house doesn't feel empty anymore. Ethan reached across the space between them and gently held her hand. Lyra didn't pull away, and for the first time, she leaned her head on someone's shoulder, not because she was weak, but because she was healing. That night, Mira snuck in too. The room where they sat and whispered sleepily, "Can we be a family now?" Ethan smiled. Lyra nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes, my little star," she said. "We already are." It had been nearly 3 full moon cycles since Ethan first met Mira. What started as a stranger's visit had turned into daily life. He cooked, fixed things, taught Myra how to read human numbers, and even planted new fruit vines behind the house. Lyra smiled more now. Not big, wide smiles, but soft ones, real, gentle, and full of quiet hope. But the village still watched. Some nodded politely when passing. Others looked away. A few muttered beneath their breath. One day, as Ethan carried water from the well, 3 older villagers stood in his path. They weren't angry, but their faces were blank, too blank. "Human," the tallest one said, "you've stayed longer than expected." Ethan nodded. "Yes, you live with her now." With the abandoned one, another added, "Her name is Lyra." Ethan replied calmly, "And she's not abandoned anymore." The third villager, an old woman with sharp eyes, asked, "Do you intend to claim her as your bondmate under Kirill law?" Ethan paused. He hadn't thought about law. He only thought about Lyra and Mira, and how it felt when the house glowed with laughter at night. But before he could answer, the woman said sharply, "If you do not claim her soon, others may challenge again. You've no protection without bond." "Others, like Tovik?" Ethan asked. The tall man frowned. "Tovik is gone, but pride still burns in families like his. You are not one of us. You may be tolerated, but you will never be accepted unless you stand before the elders." They left him standing in the dust, water sloshing in the bucket. That night, Ethan told Lyra everything. Her face fell. "I should have known." "This village doesn't forget," she said. "You don't have to do anything you don't want." Ethan said gently, "I just want to protect you both." Lyra sat in silence. Mira peeked in from the next room, holding her doll. "Are they trying to take you away?" "No, Star," Ethan said. "But they want me to prove I belong." Lyra's voice was soft. "I never thought I'd hear someone say that." For me, 2 days later, Lyra, Ethan, and Mira stood at the village circle once again. But this time, it wasn't a fight. It was a gathering. The elders sat in stone chairs. The villagers gathered in a wide ring. Lyra wore her cleanest robes. Mira held Ethan's hand tightly. The oldest elder stood and raised his voice. "This human has lived among us. He has eaten our food, slept under our sky, shared the home of a widow who was cast aside by her mate. And now he stands to request what no outsider has before." The elder looked at Ethan. "Speak, human. Why do you ask for bond with this woman of Kirill?" Ethan stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't speak like a warrior. Just like a man. "I ask because I love her. I didn't come here for love. I didn't come for anything. But her daughter's voice pulled me into their pain. Their hearts pulled me into their lives." He looked at Lyra. "She's not weak. She's not broken. She's one of the strongest people I've ever known." Then he looked at the crowd. "I'm not asking for your approval. I'm asking for her hand. I'm staying whether you call me your own or not." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The elders whispered to each other. Finally, the oldest one asked Lyra, "Do you accept this human as your bondmate?" Lyra stepped forward. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. "I was once thrown away, and I believed I would never feel safe again. But this man, this human, gave me warmth without asking for anything in return." She turned to Ethan and said, "Yes, I accept him." Mira jumped and clapped. "He's our human now." Crowd stood silent. Some eyes were soft, some hard, some confused. Then, slowly, the old woman elder stood and raised her hand. "Then, under Kirill tradition, you are now a bonded family." The villagers didn't cheer, but a few nodded. One even smiled. Later that evening, back at the small stone home, Lyra lit a ceremonial flame in the center of the house. Myra danced around it. Laughing Dot, Ethan watched Lyra from the doorway. "I didn't think today would happen," she said quietly. "Neither did I," he said. She turned, walked to him, and rested her forehead gently against his. "You gave me more than safety," she whispered. "You gave me a second chance." He took her hand. "So did you." That night, for the first time in years, Lyra didn't cry herself to sleep. She fell asleep in Ethan's arms, and Mira, sleeping between them, whispered one last sleepy word: family. The wind on Kirill 4 had changed, not in speed, not in direction, but in feeling. There was something gentler in the air, something warmer. And in a quiet home at the edge of the village, the change was clear. The once cold fire pit now burned, every evening with steady warmth. The stone walls, once cracked and silent, now echoed with laughter Mira's giggles when Ethan lifted her onto his shoulders. Or Lyra's soft chuckle when he tried to cook and nearly burned the soup. Ethan had not just stayed, he had rooted himself. He was no longer just the human. He was her human. He was their family. Mira had grown bolder. She ran through the village without hiding her doll, without looking at the ground. The children who once ignored her now listened to her wild stories about Earth, stars, and the fire-breathing engines on Ethan's ship. Some even asked to see them. Lyra walked with her head higher now. She still carried pain in her eyes, but it no longer controlled her. She looked people in the face. She spoke without fear. The woman who once curled into silence at night now stood tall beside a man who never asked her to be anyone but herself. One morning, while Ethan was repairing a tool, Myra tugged his sleeve. "Can I call you something?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "Of course. What is it?" She hesitated. "Can I call you Dad?" The word hit him like a sunrise to the heart. He knelt and hugged her tight. "Yes, I'd be honored." From inside the house, Lyra watched them. A tear slipped down her cheek, but it wasn't from sadness, it was from peace. That same evening, a knock came at the door. This time, it wasn't Tovik. It wasn't the elders. It wasn't judgment. It was 3 villagers, 2 women, and 1 man carrying baskets. "We heard it's your bonding week," one said. "It's tradition to bring gifts." Lyra was stunned. "You're celebrating us?" The woman nodded. "We were wrong. We watched you suffer and said nothing, but you proved stronger than any of us." The man stepped forward, handing Ethan a carved wooden pendant. "You may not be from Kiro, but you have more honor than many born here." Ethan thanked them. His voice was steady, but his heart raced with quiet joy. After they left, Lyra turned to him. "Do you realize what this means?" He nodded. "They're finally seeing you the way I always have." As the days passed, small changes kept coming. The village children came to Mira's home to play. Lyra was asked to help with harvest, planning something she hadn't been invited to since before her mate left. And Ethan? He was offered a place on the village council to represent off-worlders. He declined kindly, but promised to help whenever they needed him. One evening, the 3 of them sat under the stars outside their home. The sky above glowed with tiny moons and silver constellations. Myra lay between them, her head on Ethan's lap, her small fingers wrapped around Lyra's hand. Ethan spoke softly. "You know, I always thought I'd live alone until the end. Jump from world to world, fix machines, eat bad food." Lyra smiled. "And now?" He looked at her. "Now I don't want to leave this place, not ever." She leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Neither do I." There was a long silence, not an empty one, a full, peaceful silence. Then Mira asked, "Will we always be together?" Ethan looked at Lyra. Lyra kissed her daughter's forehead. "As long as the stars still shine, little one," Ethan added. And even after that, seasons passed. The house grew stronger, walls fixed, a garden blooming with alien fruit, and a new roof made by both villagers and Ethan's own human tools. But more importantly, the people inside it grew stronger too. Lyra became a voice in the village again. She led planting circles, helped other widows find hope, and was known not as the abandoned one, but as the healed one. Myra grew with laughter and light, calling Ethan Dad in front of everyone, never hiding her love. And Ethan, he found a home in a place he never expected. Not in steel ships, not in far-off stars, but in the hearts of a woman and child who needed nothing more than someone to stay. And this time, no one cried themselves to sleep. They slept as a family, held in warmth, held in love, and held in a future they chose together.